Hello, everyone, and welcome to this podcast. I am Jose Alvarado. This podcast will be an interview about cultural immersion. Today, we have a guest. She's Oriana Alvarez.
Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.
The interview consists in six questions. The first is, why did you decide to immersion yourself in the foreign culture?
Okay, why did I decide to immerse myself in foreign culture? I mean, when I was a kid, when I was like 8, 9 years old, I used to listen to English song, and I used to ask my mom, like, like, why are they saying? Why is it impossible for me to understand what they're saying? And she told me that they were speaking in another language. She told me that you speak Spanish and they speak English. So at that moment, I developed kind of an interest for learning languages and foreign cultures. So yeah, that's the reason why I decided to immerse myself in a foreign culture, because at that time, at that period of my life, I had this interest in feeling to learn new languages, and yeah, that's the reason why I decided to immerse myself in foreign culture, in this case in English.
All right. The second question is, what was your experience like at the beginning? What challenges did you face?
What was my experience? I mean, at the beginning, it was kind of frustrating because when you learn a new language, you are not able to understand pretty much anything. So honestly, it was kind of, a little bit overwhelming. And the challenge I did face at that time, I think it was frustration, because you have to learn new vocabulary, you have to learn about grammar, and as the thing is that you have to get used to frustration and keep going. You have to make the decision to keep going with your learning process, and eventually you will get used to that frustration, and you will learn that every day you learn something new, and eventually you will be able to not only understand the language but being understood, because that is one of the main reasons why we make the decision to learn a new language, because we have this kind of expectation to sooner or later being able to speak, to express ourselves in that language we are learning. So yeah.
Yeah. The third question is, were there the times when you feel that the language barrier was a major obstacle?
Where were the times when I felt that language barrier was a major obstacle? I think, when I was at university, the first semester, the second semester, I used to have this teacher. Unfortunately, I can't remember her name, but her classes was completely in English. It was a 4-hour English class. And that could be a good example of, of language barrier, because at that time I realized that the things I've been learning before university wasn't enough to understand this teacher. So that could be one example of language barrier. So yeah.
All right, interesting. Four, what aspect on the culture or language did you find most difficult to understand at first?
What culture, what aspect? I
What aspect?
mean, yeah, probably probably phrasal verbs. I mean, at the beginning when you're learning this language, you come across with this like phrasal verb, slangs, colloquialisms, that it's really difficult to understand at first. For example, when someone tells you it's not a rocket science, it's like, what do you mean by that? And eventually you you learn that it's not a rocket science, means like it's not that difficult. It is actually easy. So yeah, that could be one of the aspects that I found difficult to understand at first when I was learning this language. I mean, the slang, the phrasal verb, the colonialism, and stuff like that.
The final question is, in your experience, how does culture immersion affect language fluency, both in the speaking and comprehension?
Uh, can you repeat that question, please? I didn't understand it.
All right. In your experience, how does culture immersion affect language fluency, both in the speaking and comprehension?
I mean, if you are in a place where English, if you're in an environment when English is a native language, I mean, when where English is the spoken language, I think you learn quickly if you compare the English learning process in a classroom because you're in a situation where you have to speak. There's no option you cannot speak in another language. So because you are in real situation, in real life situation where that language is spoken, so you are kind of you have this pressure where you have to speak as soon as possible and as much as possible in order to, as I mentioned before, understand and being understood, because it's not only like, oh, okay, fine, I'm able to understand. I'm finally can understand what these people are saying. No, it's more than that. It's like I live in a place where I need to get things, and in order to get that things, I need to put into practice communication in that language. So yeah, I think uh, that's the culture in measure. That's how fluency affect immersion.
All right. The final question is, what is your perspective in language learning?
What is my perspective in language learning? I mean, so far, it's been a challenging, but at the same time rewarding experience. As I mentioned before, at the beginning, it's kind of frustrating. It's like you want to give up because you're not being able to understand, you're not being able to get what people are saying. But once you make the decision to keep going, to keep up with your learning process, you eventually realize that you can do it, and you sooner or later you will be able to speak and to understand and to write and to listen. So yeah, it's kind of challenging, but at the same time, at the end, I think it's kind of rewarding because you realize, okay, I'm able to do this. I'm finally able to speak this language I've been learning, I've been studying for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. So yeah, it's challenging and at the same a rewarding experience.
Interesting, Oriana. Thank you for your time, for this interview. You can say and the word. Or
No, thank you
finally,
for having me.
all right. Thank you.
Bye. See you.